it's wet. It's going to get higher and higher. So.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to day, I have no idea, of Lockdown Lunch with me, Kelly Ransom, and my friends who agree to do this crazy cabin fever dream broadcast with me. For those of you who are new, welcome. I started this broadcast to make sure that I stayed showered and dressed and sober during lockdown in Boston. And I think it's important to share different stories and perspectives of this whole situation. And I like to have a diversity of stories, ages, races, sex, gender, all the diversity that I could come up with. And this week, our diversity is focusing on different states. So we had someone from California, New York, Colorado, and today we have someone from Dallas, Texas, and I would like to introduce you all to Brett Will Taylor. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here.
So happy to have you. I'm just trying to pull this up on my phone. You are a storytelling shaman and consultant in Dallas, Texas, and we will get to what all that means in a minute. But I must ask you, just because I have no idea, what day it is.
Thursday. And the only reason I can answer that with some authority is I've already had 3 meetings today. So I know the meetings were scheduled for Thursday, and they happened, therefore it must be Thursday. Yes.
Do you do Zoom or?
I do Zoom, but now people are getting concerned about the security of Zoom, so we're doing Microsoft something, Space, or I don't know.
Oh, that's not an app that I've yet downloaded, but
yeah,
I'm sure I will.
I get invited to it. So, I mean, that's our new world, right? As opposed to saying, which office is Kelly in, or I'm here to see Kelly. You just pull up an email, you click on a link, and here we are.
I'm in my attic.
Yeah.
So you've been on lockdown for 5 weeks with your partner and your dog, Gartholomew. Great name. And I've been asking everyone this week how it went down in their state. So how did this whole thing go down in Texas?
So this thing, I have to answer that by saying I live both here and New Orleans.
Yes,
so,
I put that.
Yep. And I love that because nobody is talking about that, and it's something we all need to hold on to. Things started getting dicey in New Orleans early, and I was supposed to go and postponed my trip to just wait out in Texas until this blew over. And then it just very quickly, it's almost, you're way too young to remember this, but there was an old TV show called Get Smart, and it began with this spy walking towards.
Oh yeah, I saw the movie.
And as he walked, gates kept closing and closing, and that's what happened. So New Orleans closed. My mom lives in assisted living. She got shut down. My partner travels all the time, and so he got sent home. And we were thinking though in terms of days. Like, remember when you reached out on this, you and I were both like, well, if we're still in lockdown on April 23rd or whatever day, that's really far away. And now I'm like, oh, sure. So it wasn't a hard stop. It was just over about a week, it got smaller and smaller and smaller. And then I think like everybody, we had that moment of shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is real and we can't do anything, including get my hair cut. So.
Yeah. I've seen a few COVID haircuts.
I think, yeah.
So did they, you must have all the restrictions that are similar to everyone I've been talking to with like no restaurants, no non-essentials.
Right.
Stuff like that.
No restaurants. We have to wait in line to get in grocery stores now. We do live in a blessed state that still considers liquor stores to be essential businesses.
Same here.
Thank God. I can't imagine what that would be like.
Me either.
And Texas just started opening back up. And yeah, it's because we got lucky in that every death is important and every life matters, but we haven't had the surge certainly like New York or New Orleans or Chicago or even what Boston is. Even though he's a Republican, I actually think he's being pretty smart, our governor, and that we're open as of Monday. What we started being able to do is you could do shopping to go, which makes sense because if you can do restaurants to go, why not do curbside pickup shopping? The parks are open again. So those are and then because this is Texas and God country, our craft stores are open again.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So that's where we're at. Yeah.
People must be being responsible then.
That's right. New Orleans is still, Louisiana is still really, really shut down. And I think Dallas is going to do the next version of opening up next week. So that means hair salons, some restaurants, but we're going to have to figure out the distancing stuff. Yeah.
You can finally get your hair cut.
Believe me, right before I got on, I looked to see when I have an appointment on May 6th or something like that. So.
Oh, you're so lucky. I don't think that's happening here for quite a while.
And it can't. I mean, it shouldn't happen because you all numbers are still way, way, way too high. So, yeah.
Boston, from my observation, they're not behaving as well as I would like them to be behaving.
Right. Well, and I think, Kelly, I think it's tough. That's what's going on in New Orleans. And I think it's tough in compact urban areas, right? Yeah. Because I'm out here in a suburb north of Dallas. We have these massive streets, and we each have yards. And you could put a version of a Boston townhouse between each house here. And and people very nicely when they see someone, they get in the street and they distance. But it's harder in a major urban area because there's no space.
We're on top of each other.
Exactly. Yeah, and not even for a good reason. You're just You that's the way it's set up.
There's people out all the time. I'm just shocked. But I understand people need to be out. But they're not wearing their masks.
Yeah.
And they're not really social distancing when they walk by me.
Oh, see, that's tough.
I'm like, come on, Boston, let's go. Let's get together.
Yeah, I think it's right. Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
So how has your life changed? You said you travel a lot. You go between New Orleans. What have you had to do to adapt?
I have had to just like everybody, the end result is the same as everybody's, which is I'm just home. The adaptation is I was in this wonderful cycle of every 30 days I was in Boston for 7 days, New Orleans for 10 days, and Dallas for about 12.
I love it.
And it was awesome. All three cities have been home to me or are home to me.
Right.
And they have such different flavors. So it was great. So that all went away. I'm a writer, and so I'm a consultant, but I primarily am a writer. So I'm a pretty solitary guy. But what's interesting is to not have the choice. I think that's what I miss. I was probably not the healthiest upbringing, but I was raised partly in dive bars. Our second family home. So I miss that. I miss that camaraderie, especially without having New Orleans.
Right.
I live in our family home in Plano, Texas now to help take care of my mom who's down the road in assisted living. And I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to tend to this house, but full-time suburban living is not the life for me.
I'm not surprised.
It's a lot of white, a lot of conservative. It's gotten a lot better, but it's a very, suburban life is small. And
I've never lived it, so I don't even know. I've never left Boston.
Oh yeah, you couldn't even come. I have Dallas friends who are like, yeah, we just don't go up there. So, so that's it. Like all of us, my life has gotten smaller, and but the good thing for like in Texas and in New Orleans, it's more of a punishment because we can't go fest, which is what we do now. But in Texas, it's spring, so it's beautiful.
I'm jealous. The weather here is not great.
Yeah, a pandemic and winter is that's too much. That's too much.
It's been very limited, beautiful days. So that's making me a little crazy, but I keep, it's like, okay, next week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I lived up there for 20 years. This is the time of year where it's like, it's sunny. I'm going to go outside for an hour because then it'll be gone.
Right. It's like the lousy smarch weather.
Right. Yep.
So you are a storytelling shaman and a consultant, but I want to talk about storytelling shaman because I don't really know what that means, and I bet people watching don't either, or maybe they do. But enlighten me, please.
Who knows who's out there watching your show? So I guess I would just to take each word. So I tell people I'm a storyteller because whether it's consulting work or work I do with men or writing. Everything I do is about helping folks find the essence of their stories and then figuring out how to share that essence in a way that they get to express who they are, but they express it by connecting with who all of us are. So the work is very much about taking your individual story and connecting it with the universal story. Because we all have seen plenty of Instagram photos of arugula plated with cherry tomatoes and balsamic. But if your arugula and balsamic and cherry tomatoes speaks to a universal thing of being human, we're all in. So that's the storytelling part. The shaman part, all that really means is that I happen to believe, or I happen to go through life believing that all living things have spirit. All living things have stories. And that's actually, come to find out, that's been a wonderful help in how I've gotten through all this, because there are so many people in the world who connect only with humans.
That's true.
And like, that's it. And maybe a dog, maybe a cat. But there's so many people like, that's it. And I love my species, as Maud said, and Harold and Maud. I see and connect with the stories of the wind. In Texas now, the bluebonnets are out with the energy of the virus. I mean, all of those things, they're all living things. So to me, they all have stories. So they're all part of the worlds I live in.
That's beautiful and fascinating, and also sounds like a little bit of a burden to like.
It can be, yeah. I mean, I think
be so empathetic with everything.
Well, but I'm going to say something because I mean that's such a great call out.
Sorry.
No, it's awesome. No, I love it. It's so great. I miss seeing you. I forgot how fabulous you are. I knew you were fabulous. I just forgot kind of fabulousness. And we're both sober, so imagine.
I
know. You said that must be a burden. And I think, it can be, but everything in life can be a burden. It's how you choose to carry yourself, how you choose to walk through life. And what I was going to point out is, one of your drugs of choice in producing events, right?
Yes.
And that is a huge burden.
Oh, yes.
But you don't really carry it as a burden, right? I mean, you see it, there's responsibility.
Not until the week
of. But that day of, it's not a burden, it's the magic. You're walking through the magic. And
I miss it.
Yeah, and that's how I see doing, being a shaman.
That's beautiful. I really love that.
Yeah.
It makes me want to be more aware.
Yeah, well, you're pretty aware, but yeah, we could all be. I mean, and I think the question is, where do we? I wrote a little bit about this today because I think awareness, absolutely, but it's your intention of where you choose to put that awareness, because it is so easy right now to have your awareness be that all of this sucks, that people are assholes, that you're never going to get your life back, and aloof and detached from humanity, because again, it's our species. But I am somebody who believes there's always wonder in being alive. And even if you're in the ICU, or if you're unemployed, or you're stuck in a suburb, you can always find wonder.
I love that. People need to hear that. And I hope that helps someone watching now or later. But
it always helps me when I say it. I mean, I think, one of my great lines, one of my favorite things, there's a songwriter named Todd Snyder. And there's always a point in his shows where he goes, I write these songs because I want to write them, and they help me. And I share them in case they help you. But I think it's important to hold both.
So when you write at home, do you have like a system? Are you disciplined? Is it in spurts? Like,
Yeah. So I write. I have this weird thing in that I see the story and I hear it as if it's in a 4x6 frame.
oh wow.
And so when I'm really in that frame, it's almost like I'm just taking dictation. So I will have a topic that I want to write about, or my book, which is my never-ending book, and I'll be in a scene. And there's times where I just sit down and write the scene out. But those in between those are lots of moments of I'll see that snapshot and I'll see an element of it or a color I hadn't seen before, and I make a note about it.
Oh,
Yeah, and then you sit down, and then for me, I do all that, and I'll have pages and pages of notes. But when it's the actual writing, I look at none of it. It's like that's all just the prep work, and then you sit down, and it just comes out, and it's done.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
and so organic. I like that.
That's what works for me. I mean, there's a lot of people who I really get you should write every morning. There's a lot of people, and I get energetically, they're like, you should write at the same time.
Right. I can't do that either.
It doesn't work for me. It just doesn't. It's, I mean, I was up till 1 o'clock this morning making notes on stuff. And
you never know.
Yeah.
So you're also a consultant, and that I consult not as much as you, but a little bit, and that has changed significantly. And I'm wondering how being a consultant during this has changed for you.
Well, I am lucky in that I haven't lost any clients. I'm actually busier with most of them, but that's also because the clients I have right now are in mental health, change management, organizational design, and inclusion. And so all of those are things that will have a very change.
Yes.
So almost from the beginning, my first conversations were about how are we going to go? Where are we going to go? Where are we going to go on the other side? So, which I love. I'm an old campaigner. I'm an old politician, literally old. And, when you're in campaigns, there's always this moment before the election where you start thinking about the day after the election. And so that's kind of what I've been in, which is awesome. I mean, I have great clients, and they're set up both nonprofit and corporate to do some really amazing work, and they're all supporting their folks as we go through this.
That's amazing, and I'm so happy that you keep all your clients. It's very different in events consulting world right now. So.
Yeah. People are like, no. So, but I think all of it is about how both structurally and personally, how do you get people back to doing events and things?
Right. I'm unpacking daily.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, you're going to have a longer gap. I think it's just like people in the bar industry are going to have a longer gap than one. But oh my God, the opportunities for someone as creative as you are when we get to the other side are going to be enormous.
I'm figuring it out. I've been completely transparent with everyone, though. Right now, I don't like digital events. They're not.
No.
But I need to learn to love so that I can thrive.
Yeah, but I think also hold on to there's nothing, we talked about this, I talked to this with some friends the other night about New Orleans, and
right, they have so many events.
Yeah, well, exactly, and we're all Zooming and all that. Nothing place of the human connection and interaction.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I was so worried about places like that depend on the tourism.
Oh yeah.
Bar scene, and it makes me really nervous, but I'm optimistic, I guess. That's all I can be.
It's unprecedented. I mean, we've come through this, we came through the storm, and that was a while. It took a while to come back, but we've never had evacuated we couldn't come together as a city, but you could still come together with whatever pockets you were with.
Right.
And when we came back, by zip code, you could get together with whoever was there. And I think, for New Orleanians, and to be clear, I'm not from New Orleans. I have only been around there for 10 years. We have to be with each other. As a friend of mine said, we are individually eccentric, but we love to share our individual eccentricities as a community.
110,000%.
Yeah, that's a big gap.
So you say that New Orleans is your soul home.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means that whenever I am driving to New Orleans and I see the first sign that says New Orleans, whenever I step foot and literally walk in New Orleans after being away, I know I'm home. I just know it. It's the same experience I had for many years when I was fortunate enough to have a place in the summer on the Cape in P-Town. And I would drive, somebody taught me this, as I would start to drive over the bridge, I would take off my watch because that's when we all wore watches.
Oh, nice.
But it's like you are on Cape. And so it's a transitional, it's a thing just like this. Or in Boston, there's always that August night that you can smell the fall.
Yes,
that, it's that deep, it's that immediate. I just, I know and it makes me cry every time. Yeah.
I know. It's like intense.
I know I'm home when I'm there. Yeah.
I'm lucky to feel that way every day in Boston.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and for you, even JP,
right?
Like it's that concentration,
JP is, it's special. I don't know. I'm just there, and I'm like, it's different.
Yeah, it is. It's a home.
So you're in Texas, and your mom is nearby.
Yep. And
she's not living with you?
No, she is in an assisted living community down the road.
But this experience has brought you closer. You mentioned, so I'm just wondering how that. Have you been seeing her all the time, or?
I do. She's been on lockdown since March 11th, so that means she can't go out. I can't come in.
Right.
It's sort of like going to see the Queen every day at Buckingham Palace. Her bedroom window's on the back of the community building, and so I drive to the back, and I get out of my car and I stand on this little plot of grass and I call her, and the drapes part.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a piece I'm working on which starts, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm actually very grateful that my mom is quarantined. And it's not, part of that's because she's safer than she would be out here. But it's also, Kelly, it's really interesting in that it has made our world so small. We're not worried about doctor's appointments or getting her to a restaurant, or I'm not doing her shopping or taking her shopping. What we have is that plot of grass, and her on one side of the window and I'm on the other, and that's our world. And so there's an innocence to it. There's a chance to reconnect with my mom as just my mom and her son. That's very beautiful and very precious. And I have to say, very healing. I have hated Dallas, Texas since 1965, when I was born. And as I told people when I had to come back because of mom's health, Dallas and I were going to give each other one more try. And, we're still trying. It's not perfect, but there is something powerful about coming home to face your ghost. And that's really what it is. That's what I want. It's to face the ghost. And it's powerful. Oh, girl.
I feel that. And sometimes you don't even need to go.
No.
To do that.
And it's so interesting because we live in such a masculine-oriented world. And by that I mean, like, people are looking for answers, they're looking for certainty, they're looking for steps. And so people are like, "Oh, so are you saying I should move home? Like, I hate my home, I hate my parents, I da-da-da." And I'm like, absolutely not. No. It's time. And I just had this moment I remember I was walking across the living room of our family home. I was all by myself. It was like 9 o'clock at night. And I just had this moment of knowing you've got to come home. And I don't know what that means. And a lot of it's going to suck. But I'm very grateful to be here. I'm very grateful. And I'm very lucky in that, my mom is getting exceptional care. Everyone in the place is safe and healthy. And so it's good.
And it's great for her to see you, definitely. Like,
yeah.
Especially with no in, no out. Like, I'm glad you guys found a way to.
Oh yeah, we have a blast. Everybody there makes fun of us because we're just like, people, and I have my headset on. So some of some folks who go by, they have no idea, like, why is this guy talking to but she's there. She's there.
Who cares what they think?
Exactly. That's the truth.
So something that you mentioned, that you wrote to me when we were setting this up, that I've just been like, what is that conversation going to be like, is what this pandemic can teach us about the snow globe worlds we all live in. I love that term.
Yeah. So thank you. It's a term that came to me by writing my book. And the first scene in my book is my 40th birthday party. And the first line of the book is, it was the party of a lifetime. And the point of that isn't that it was the grandest party or the best food or whatever. It was the party that celebrated the life I had built and very carefully constructed over 40 years. And so the pullout from that chapter, from that scene, hello, kitty.
Oh, sorry, she's so needy.
Oh, she's adorable. We're all needy these days, honey. Yeah. But the pullout from that scene is that the whole party, the whole life is happening in a snow globe. And outside of it is a raven and a woman in black who basically came and told me I was a shaman and took me on this 14-year journey. But the point of that is, we are all nothing but energy and matter. There is that isn't energy and matter. And we have constructed a society, we've constructed a perspective that agrees that those are beads around your neck, that you have a tattoo, that you're wearing glasses, that today is Thursday, that we have a pandemic, that you have a cat. And all of that is by choice. It's all by it's all about an agreement of how we as humans will see the energy and matter that is in our world. And that's totally cool, right? Because who wants to be just a bunch of blob of energy and matter, right?
Right, and trippy as hell.
I would much rather know Kelly Ransom than energy and matter. But it's cool and understandable that we do it. But the challenge for us, and this is what I think the pandemic is challenging a lot of people on, the challenge is when you forget you're living in a snow globe.
Yeah.
That will, I live on Winterstone Drive in Plano, Texas, and it's Winterstone Drive on Plano. And it's like, no, it's not. You know, we just put this stuff down that we called asphalt. We decided to call it this. And by the way, you're on an entire planet that's 4 billion years old. And think about the sun and think about the star. We're tiny, tiny, tiny.
Right.
And to make sense of our tininess and to feed our egos, we build these snow globes that we call our worlds. And we, what the pandemic is doing is it's shaking that snow globe up. And what I have found is if your only world is in that snow globe, concretely, you're pretty miserable right now because there's nowhere to go while this is happening. You're like, Jesus Christ. If you have some way of connecting, and I'll explain why, then you're doing okay. Because when I say, there's a shaman view that could be like, well, energy and matter, and you transcend it, and there's the wheel of time, and you can do all this fun stuff. That's one way to think outside the globe.
Yeah.
But I know you live outside of the way because you have an imagination. You see what doesn't exist and you manifest that. So if you have those skills, if you're creative, you're doing okay. But if you live in if you're a really concrete oriented black and white person, I think it's hard.
Definitely.
Yeah. So there you go.
That's just so hard.
Yeah. Why is it hard?
Whenever for myself, when I let myself get to that plane, that level of this is all just, I mean, I'm a little more negative of a person than you are, I think, but I'm like, this is all bullshit. Like, why are these systems in place? Why is this called a computer? Like, what? I get like bummed out. I don't feel like, I don't know. And then you think of how small you are in space, and it's just like, whew. I like trip myself out sometimes thinking about that stuff.
Well, I would say two things about that. I think one, and I don't mean to be that guy, but I guess I am that guy.
You can.
You're young, and you're still having the amazing experiences of being an adult as you age, and you're on this path, right? And so you're still having these major, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm having this moment.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm 50, I'll be 50, so I'm not going like this. I'm not doing this. I'm more here. But I've met presidents of the United States. I've made a lot of money. I've made not any money. I've had amazing experiences. So I've had the opportunity to feed all of that.
Yeah.
I also have had some really beautiful wise ones. They're like my, they're like my 10-man scarecrow and lion.
I love that analogy.
Yeah. I don't look good in a dress, but I would look good. I would rock ruby red slippers, but a dress, especially gingham, good. But I've also had wise ones, and when this all started, when my snowglobe got shattered, because I wanted it to, because spirits were coming in.
Yeah.
I was lucky because the wise ones I had, what they grounded me in was what one of them calls the magic of the ordinary. So the magic is not the supernatural world, and I can play with dragons. The magic is this. The magic is the smallness. And so it taught me to take away that concept of specialness, because is just that we're alive. There is no, nothing is extraordinary. The extraordinary is the ordinary. So, it took many years, but it was a reframe. And now quite frankly, it's a huge, it's a lift of a huge burden. I'm not here to change the world. None of us can change a 4 billion year old planet. We can contribute. We can experience. Yes, you help organizations raise money. I mean, there's a concrete need to that. And let's be clear, we need food. We need shelter.
Yes, yeah.
I like to have enough money to buy really good gin. Things are important, but because I've watched you in action. The main reason you do events is so people feel good for a couple of hours.
Yeah, it's an escape.
And that's it. So that's a pretty amazing thing.
And to raise money. I love raising money.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Oh, what you just said about the specialness, like, for me, that reached me because I have a similar outlook on, once again, more of a pessimist, negative person, but I don't have hope or get hopeful about anything, because when I get my hopes up, then there's something to be let down. And I think seeing that's it, getting in a space where nothing is special, everything is special, is like the brighter side of that negative Nancy.
And I think we've all had challenges in our life. All makes us all negative Nancy sometimes. You're catching me on the other side of a 5-day period that was, wouldn't say it was dark, but it was very cloudy. And so, you're catching me on the other side of that. But I think one of the things that I have learned from yoga, of all things, and obviously I'm hardly a yogi, but when you hope, when you get your expectations high, you're not in the present. You've taken yourself out of this, and you're living somewhere in the future. And the future never looks as good as we imagine it to be, right? Again, I go back to events. When someone is like, well, I saw Madonna's reinvention tour, and I love how she had that crystal, Cartier ball, and I'd like to have something like that. And you're like, and your budget is, they're like, and my budget is $1,500 for everything. And it's like, you would be amazing what a little glitter on some balloons can do. It's fabulous. Like, let's be present. So that's part of what I've learned. I just am like, my partner and I have something that we said, especially in the beginning, because in the first few weeks, we weren't clear if our jobs would make that first hurdle, right? And we knew. So what our line was, we have a job today. And then at the end of the day, be like, we still have a job for tomorrow. And so we stayed in the present, and I think it really helped.
I love that, and I think it's super important, and I try my best to do that. But it's hard, especially now everyone's just like reaching for the end.
Yeah, but I've seen you in action, and you have. I think one of the reasons that you're so good is you're very creative, but you also understand what it takes to get things done. I've seen you marshal volunteers, and it's like, no, you're not coming to. This is not about. I want to have a good time, and I love that band. You have a job.
Yeah.
You do your job, and then you can go hear the band. But you're gonna you. So I think you. And none of us see ourselves as we really are. That's why we have, hopefully, honest friends and all us partners. But I think you have a really beautiful ability for both ends. So you can pie in the sky vision, but it's like, this is what it takes to get it done. Because that's what a lot of people who live in the clouds have zero concept. They're all love and light, and that
they're beautiful, but.
Well, but they don't live in the world, because the world is not love and light. I mean,
no.
You is, and Yin Yang teaches you is, you cannot have love without hate. You cannot have light without dark. And so if you're running through life saying, this pandemic will create a world of love. Well, we already have a world of love, but that world of love, its partner is hate. And that's the world.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I love this episode right now. I'm so happy to talk to you again. We haven't talked in forever.
Yeah, we'll get together. Absolutely.
Yes. So I ask every guest, because I am on my mental health journey, and I realized that it's important to talk about mental health. I've asked all of the guests that have been on what they have been doing for their mental health during this time.
Trying to remember that I should tend to it. So I do a couple of things. I don't have the discipline to say I do one thing every day.
I'm the same.
And part of this goes back to what we just talked about being present, right?
Yeah.
So what I try to do is look at being present. And for some reason, I'm supposed to share. Excuse me while I distractedly clean off a coffee stain off my computer. I guess my mental health says, see there, I'm not present. But I had this great acupuncturist in Greater Boston when I lived there. And he introduced me to Chinese herbs. And I was horrified the first time he gave me some herbs, because he gave me 4 different bottles of powder. And I was like, well, what's the prescription? And so
what do I do with this?
It's like, do I look like a Chinese herbalist? And so he explained, well, this is what this one does. This is what this one does. This is what this one does. This is what this. And he said, you just every morning and night check in with yourself and decide how much of each you need. And he goes, that's how it works.
Huh.
And I'm like, well, wait, like, where does it have a suggested daily dose? Do I only do it? And he's like, no, just listen to yourself. And again, it was a guide. It was so helpful. So I think every day I try to listen to myself. And by the way, that means some days what I hear myself say is, I can't deal.
Yep.
No, I should go for a walk. I know I should have quinoa in breast, but I'm going to have a massive gin and tonic, and I'm going to sit on my ass, and I'm going to look at bad Facebook or bad TV.
Hey, whatever. No, it's fine.
Yeah, we're in this. I mean, we will never live in a non-COVID world ever again, and so you have to allow your body, your spirit, your emotions, your mind to catch up with what's going on. So,
yes.
I try to meditate every day. I'm a big believer in short meditations. I think if you're able to meditate for a half an hour or an hour, awesome. I honest to God find that 3 minutes is, yeah, I set my timer for 3 minutes and I will just sit and I look off the end of my nose instead of closing your eyes. And if I can, for 3 minutes, focus on my breath, then I feel better. And there's sometimes that I'll do it again. Sometimes I get up. If I don't even have 3 minutes, I will sometimes, if I'm like, something's wrong, like something's not right today, I'll try to count 40 breaths. And every time my mind wanders, I'll go back to 0 and go.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really good advice.
And that actually will help me sometimes be like, you're just a mess. Or it'll be, God, someone said some random thing and it sent you on this spiral and you thought that spiral was done, but it's there. So I do those kinds of things. I walk a lot. I do try to walk. And I write, and I really, I try to live a life where I pay very close attention to what's going on around me. So if I feel like something is calling me, if I feel like I need to look, I'm a Google fanatic. If I feel like I need to look up a book, or the other night at like 1 a.m., I was like, you should reread Camus, or The Plague by Camus. So boom, I got it. That's kind of what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
No, that's great. No, I think that's really good advice, and just good. Just listen to yourself. Like,
yeah.
I don't do that enough.
Yeah, we're not going to fix ourselves. We are not going to fix ourselves from this.
I'm a very got to do this and do this and do this, because that is the way, and that's the way I said it was.
Yep.
And that's how my day's going to go.
Yep.
And then at the end of the day, you're like, oh my God, I wasn't even paying attention to myself all day. I need a Manhattan.
Yeah. And Manhattan's, listen, I'm a big, when this first started, we did a podcast episode of What Are We Doing? And I was like, I'm trying to be more intentional. I'm trying to be something about conscious with my breathing. And I said, and I'm more generous with my gin. And it's like, somewhere in that combination, it works because, this is hard. And the other, and I think part of what's hard about this is there is no one who isn't going through it.
Right.
We're all traumatized. And so you don't have that normal thing where you can go someone who's not in the trauma to go, oh, girl, you know what?
Yeah.
You did
get advice, and yeah.
It's like, are you kidding? Yeah.
So what's your podcast? Where can we find it?
The podcast is called Everyday Wonder. You can find it on Google and Spotify and Apple. It's in its second season, and the original idea from the podcast was that maybe if we could just recover our sense of wonder, we wouldn't be so divided, and we could learn to have conversations again, and we could slow down and be present. And so that was lovely, and we were planning season 2 to be the same lovely, nice little soft cloud approach. And then all hell broke loose. And so now it's very much a podcast about how are we doing with this. And, the two unique spins of it are, one, it's based in New Orleans. So we say that New Orleans is our permanent guest. So we always try to look at things slightly through the prism of New Orleans. And my co-host and I are sort of an odd couple of podcast co-hosts. So she's very much of the earth and very 1, 2, 3. She's a planner. She believes in concrete things. She's a legacy journalist. So she's always looking for data and facts. And I'm a storytelling shaman. And so, part of, and I think what a lot of people enjoy about it is not necessarily the content, because let's be clear, there's plenty of stuff out there about this is how you live through a pandemic. It's the conversation, and it's the fact that two very dear friends can see the world so differently and continue to see the world differently and still benefit from talking with each other and benefit.
I love that.
Yeah.
I want to suggest that everyone listen to that. I know you're all listening to podcasts and stuff. Everyday Wonder. Are there any other books, TV, music, movies, things you're consuming right now?
Media? Yeah, music is my muse, so I'm always listening to music.
I know, I've seen your Facebook, you're doing the album cover challenge.
I'm going to tag you today. I was in it and I forgot. I will. I'll get you. So music is my muse. So there's nobody knows who did this, but Tina Turner, probably now about 7 years ago, did this series of albums that are called Beyond. And they are they're only with women, 2 other women she does it with. One chant like ancient Christian mystic chants, and the other does, I think, Buddhist or maybe Hindi chants. And then Tina Turner has these speaking pieces, but she does her Buddhist chants. And it's called Beyond, and there's a piece of it. There's my favorite is called Love Within, and it's one of the album covers I posted.
Okay.
And so it's very much about the feminine perspective, not gender, but archetypical.
Yeah.
And the first piece is really her talking about we all come from the mother, we have the mother within, and that, beyond despair is voice, is singing. And there's this pause, and she sings 3 bars a cappella of Amazing Grace.
Oh.
And it gives me chills and it ends.
I have to listen.
So I listen to that. There's tons of music. I'm not listening to anything dark these days because it's like we have enough darkness.
That's our difference.
So I'm like, what can kind of pep me up? I'm always asking people for new music. I'm reading The Plague. I'm reading Rumi. I'm reading Mary Oliver. I'm reading that's called The Wisdom of the Desert, and it's about some monks from 13th century or 12th century. I'm rereading that. I'm not a TV or movie guy, but I actually have just started 2 nights ago a Pedro Almodovar binge. So I'm watching all of Almodovar's movies, and because he always finds color and brightness and humor in the darkness. I mean, I never knew this, that he really came out of the end of Franco's reign in Spain. And so he came out of this deep oppression and started getting people together, sort of a ragtag group of artists to express freedom and to talk about what that is. So that's been very helpful.
Those are great suggestions and brand new ones. We've gotten a lot of Tiger King on this broadcast.
Yeah, I made it through one, and
not hating on Tiger King, but
yeah, no, I love it. I think it's hysterical. And by the way, my partner and I, we communicate with each other half the time by laying in bed and say, "Did you see this on Instagram?" And
Christopher and I are the same.
Yeah, he was telling me, who is it, Jay? Wait a minute, because I'm going to tell you this. Have you seen this? Because this is sharing with you. Okay. Have you seen Adam Ray Okay?
I don't think so.
Oh, you're going to die. You will.
Okay.
Adam Ray Okay. Mainly on TikTok, but you can find him on Instagram too.
At R-A-Y?
Yeah, R-A-Y and then O-K-A-Y.
Okay. I put it in the comments so I won't lose it.
Good.
now we've come to the part of the broadcast where I shut the hell up and I put on some sunglasses, and you get to leave your final words with everyone. So if you're new to watching this broadcast, I let every guest have the final word, and they can do whatever they want with their time. They can tell jokes, be inspirational, shout out their family. I don't care. So, well, the floor is yours.
So I'm going to keep it short and sweet. We've been opening our podcast episodes in the last few weeks with a quote from Dolly Parton, or as I say, at least we think it's from Dolly Parton. We can't quite attribute it, but it sounds like Dolly Parton, and we all love Dolly Parton. And couldn't we use some Dolly Parton today? And the quote is this: "You cannot control the wind, but you can adjust your sails." And I think it's such a helpful frame for how to go through this and where to put our energy. Because I think what we have to all remember is we only have so much energy or time or stamina or whatever you want to call it. And if you get hooked or tricked into spending all of it in yelling at this politician or that, or mourning this loss or that, those behaviors, they don't replenish your energy. They don't, you are giving yourself to the wind. You are tucking your sails. But if you put your energy every day, and this goes back to your beautiful question about mental health, to adjusting your sails just so you can get through the day, or just so you can get through the hour, you will get through. And I believe there is a lot of beauty and love and light on the other side of this. And those of us who get to the other side will not only be better for it, but will have a reason for being there. And that's why we need our sails, because we're going to need them to fulfill that reason. So that's what I would say. And
that's beautiful. You're so beautiful.
I would say thank you. I think what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. And now I'm watching, so we don't know if you're really frozen or just pretending as you reach for your vodka. Uh-oh. And well, we seem to have lost Kelly, so I assume she usually tells folks thank you and goodbye. But I guess for her, I'll say thanks, and aren't we all glad to have some Kelly Ransom in our life, whether we're locked down over lunch or outside celebrating. So thanks, everybody.
Oh, did we lose Will? Aw. Sorry, I was just commenting. Sorry that I froze at the end, but it was the end. I just want to let everyone know that tomorrow we were supposed to have my wonderful friend Tiffany on from Florida, but she's not feeling well. So we are going to have my friend Dave DeCenzo on. He is an essential employee at a medical marijuana dispensary, so that should be an interesting conversation. It's also the end of the week, so those shows are always fun. Will, thank you so much for being on. Sorry I lost you at the end. Everyone check out his podcast, Everyday Wonder. This was a beautiful hour. Thank you everyone for watching, liking, sharing, commenting, watching now, watching later, and tuning in all the time. I really appreciate it. Think about what Will said. He said a lot of amazing things, so I'm going to go sit with that. Please stay home, stay healthy, wash your hands, wear a mask, and be present. Love you all. See you tomorrow.